What is going on, YouTube? PPS back. It is past the prop. It is Friday. You know what that means. We're coming back to you. Some NFL action. 2-game slate. I know it's a short slate. Probably going to be a little bit of a quicker show, but we're coming at you guys with plays for both games. Coming at you for the NFC and AFC championship game. Joined as always by my guy, Stu. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. And a lot of people have already said this week, but I definitely parrot that opinion that I do think we have the 4 best teams left. The Bills, Bengals was a little bit arguable. We obviously saw how that turned out last week. So now we're just in store for, in my opinion, 2 amazing matchups this week. So I really couldn't be happier. Obviously, good football is a great sign for all of us. Good for prop betting, good for, everything. So I'm hyped. I'm glad we got a great guest right here, and I'm ready to give out some winning picks.
Yeah, we're joined by Eric Pauly. First time to the show. I know you work with Sports Memo, FTN as well. How are you doing? How has this NFL playoffs been treating you so far?
Yeah, doing well. I want to thank you guys for having me on the show. Really excited to chop it up, talk some NFC Championship, AFC Championship with you guys. Like you said, Stu, these are the 4 best teams in the NFL. If you look at some of the look-ahead lines odd makers make for the Super Bowl, all 4 of the matchups that they could be are all like -1 spreads also. So best 4 teams. It's been a great season, great playoffs, and looking to end strong, but obviously going to be very sad when the NFL season unfortunately concludes.
Yeah, it's weird. It gets towards the end, and obviously we get super excited. We're obviously going to be running a lot of bets out there for 2 games for sure. But yeah, we like the spreads being close. I know we've seen a lot of big spreads in this playoffs here. So obviously we're ready to roll today. Let's take a quick look at the chat. We got a few of you guys already in here in the first couple minutes joining us on your Friday afternoon. Thank you guys for joining us early and often. Terrence, first guy in the chat. We love to see it. We got John popping in here. Chase as well. I believe that might be our boy. I don't even know. I'm going to call him John L because I don't know how to say the last name. I'm not even going to try it.
Legeza.
Yeah. I'll kick that to you. I'll let you roll it out for us. And then we got Steve in there as well. One thing I do want to make sure we do is recap NBA before we go into our NFL. I will be depressed looking at this, but hey, it's all right. So Shea scored 25 in the first half. Sabonis disappeared for the entire second half, so that was unfortunate. Sengun, little tripped up there. How come that wasn't your long shot, dude?
Yeah, he destroyed my Wizards just like we thought he would, so went according to plan.
Ja comes through on some late game free throws. I was streaming that. I laid in bed, and I'm like, oh, shit, Memphis is still on, aren't they? Pull out my phone. I put the ESPN stream on. It's like 10 seconds left. He's at 27, and he hits both free throws. Gotta love that. And then, I think he hit this in the first half, so it was a good start. Unfortunately, the part we're gonna get to here is a little more depressing. But Sabonis, what did he have? I think Murray had 4, didn't he, or 3?
Yeah, Murray had 4. Sabonis ended up selling us on the long shot right here. Just got shut down. He had 9 turnovers, so he got closer to turnovers than assists there, unfortunately.
I love that. Hey, maybe it counts. You never know. And this might be the worst beat I've had of the NBA season for at least a long shot. Obviously, Dame dropped 60, and SGA had 25 points at half. All we needed was 15 in the second half. I'm pretty sure he had like 36 or 37. So I shouldn't have got so greedy. Should have went 35 on SGA. It still would have been like plus 300. But, man, 28-1, and we were 4 points off. It was just it was rough. It was absolutely rough to see that. So, yeah, we will check it out. Yeah, we got popping out here. At least he gave me the context on how to spell it. That helps me a lot. I might have to pin that. Put that as like a favorited comment so I can always see that. Yeah, SGA did crush us. Vucevic did suck. Yes, dude, I now understand your hate, Stu. I understand your Vucevic hate because this man's second halves are the worst I've ever seen. This man's a bum in the second half. It's bad.
Well, and I see John bringing up already got some NFL in there with Debo rush yards. I saw the same thing, man. This was something I bet last week at 14.5. I got the great CLV at close 17 or 18. He had 15 yards, and then he ran backwards for a couple of yards. it's really hard for me to tell. I was kind of hoping we get 17, 18 again in this game. I was very confused. He had no rushes in the second half of that game, which is obviously a little bit weird because Christian McCaffrey was hobbled, right? He was only coming in on those third downs, and we had just all Elijah Mitchell, which wasn't really going too well until the very end. And now both of them are on the injury report this week. Both of them missed practice yesterday. I don't know if we have an update for that yet today, but it'll be interesting. Debo's obviously one of the most explosive, guys in the league in general, no matter what position he's playing. So I'd definitely be interested in those rush yards. But unfortunately, 20.5 is a little higher than expected for me as well.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't expect to see that. I know I've been seeing some love on the Brock Purdy rush line. Is that something you guys are looking at there? I saw it on one of the guys, I think from like Daily Wager or something on ESPN, talking about that being their spot. Have you guys? I know, Stu, you're a dabbler on that QB rushing. Is that a spot maybe this week? Obviously, it's not on our show, which is why we can talk about it now because we're about to get into the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it always feels like a coin flip to me when you're betting on like quarterbacks that won't get any designed runs besides maybe, like a quarterback sneak on like a 3rd and 1 or something like that. So that always concerns me. You're pretty much depending on a scramble. But the good news here is that, that's something that's very possible, right? This Eagles defensive line, number 1 in sack rate so far this season. That's obviously shown in the playoffs. So they're getting at the quarterback. They're forcing them out of the pocket. The question is, will Purdy be able to scramble for 10 or so yards? I don't know. That's a little more scary to me. You have any thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, so if you're looking at Purdy over there, you also have to kind of be a little bit concerned because if the Niners are winning this football game and they're going to be taking knees at the end of the game and you're hitting, we had that 10-yard rush. Next thing you know, you're losing that bet based on kneel down. So I was actually looking at this myself also, and something that Purdy has done well has been when he does get pressure, he's been pretty safe with the football, throwing it out of bounds, not committing that crucial turnover. As for the rushing yards, though, like he only topped 8.5 one time so far. That was in that first matchup against the Seahawks. But I don't know, from what Purdy's been showing me so far, he seems more than content. And I'm sure Shanahan and the rest of the Niners are more than content with when the play breaks down, you're out of the pocket, just throw that ball away. Don't lose yards, don't fumble, don't throw that back-breaking pick. Just get that ball out of bounds and look at the next play and live to die another play.
Yeah, no, and I like that you brought that up because I know Dak, everybody's talking about those turnovers with Dak because Dak does force those. Obviously, does get a little bit more of the rushing upside on those, but that's really what lost them the game, right? That lost Dallas the game, those 2 turnovers. Obviously, we've seen Purdy not really turn the ball over, even though we were talking about it before stream. He was not impressive last week, and I think that we're going to be talking about that here shortly. We're going to get into this game. I want to make sure we can check out who's all in the chat here. We're getting a lot more of you guys in here. We appreciate you. And then we will get into game number 1, which is going to be that Philly game there. We have Terrence bringing up the Purdy line only at 8.5. So that's possibly a spot, obviously. I got Purdy over live. Hey, maybe that's a spot to go to over 2.5 last week. I got Turbo in here. Shane, I will talk about your Kelsey spot there. I will talk about that shortly. Got to think Lou puts a lot of attention on Kelsey. I think, it's going to be an interesting one for sure. And then Strogi, what's good, boys? Happy Friday.
I kind of like that too. I'm glad you brought that up. The only thing is they have a third tight end. I forget his name.
Bell?
Yeah, 83.
Because I took them both last weekend against Jacksonville with the same mindset that, they're the worst defense against tight ends in football, the Jaguars were. So obviously you got to focus on the best tight end in football, leaving some possibilities. I had first touchdown for Bell. He actually ran a route on that play that Kelsey scored, so not the worst pick there. But very interesting that you say that, though, plus money, Bob, because that was literally my mindset last week. But I think, again, Lou Anarumo in that talent, he's a better DC, so I would expect him to at least get a little bit more focus on Kelsey this week. And it's kind of surprising Peterson didn't have the clamps or try to put the clamps on Kelsey last week.
Yeah, and I mean, too, the Chiefs team is the team that runs the most 12 personnel out of any team in the playoffs, right? They love those 2 tight end sets. They love protecting, Mahomes, and they're going to need that a little bit more in this game when he kind of lacks that mobility. So I definitely think that's a good look. The problem is, like we kind of said, they have 3 different tight ends that they can all kind of use at any given moment in the red zone, and that does make it a little bit more complicated to kind of nail down which one is going to get it.
Yeah, it's just so tough for Kelsey, too. It's so tough for you to actually stop him. The dude's getting 11, 12, 13 targets in these games. It's Anytime there's any sort of pressure on Mahomes, you know exactly where the ball's going. Even Mr. Chad Henne can find a way to get that ball to Travis Kelce. Just peppered him down the field on his 98-yard touchdown drive. I mean, hey, that might get him that big boy contract, that Matt Flynn type contract that we're talking about.
98 yards. He threw for like 23 of them.
And wait, I wanted to check. Jody Fortson is a tight end too, right? He practiced this week as well. So
he practiced?
4. Yeah. So just another name to be worried about if you are trying to bet on that little tight end trifecta there.
I love it. We might as well get this thing rolling. 25 of you guys in the chat, first 10 minutes. Let's get this party started. Only 2 games on the docket, obviously, with it being championship week. And we're going to start out with the first game of the weekend, and that's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles at home against the Niners. 2 p.m. is the start time there. Make sure you know that's a different time than usual. I don't have a play in this game. I got 2 plays in the next game, so I'll be kicking it over to you guys here. Let's first just I'll kick it to you, Stu, since I know Eric has one exactly on what we're going to be talking about here. Do you have a lean on a side and or a total in this game? We're looking at the spread right now, 2.5, and then 46.5 is the over/under.
Yeah, I mean, for the total, I actually think the totals on both of these games are pretty sharp. You know, I think they're both like around where I would have them set, so I don't have a strong take there. The line is interesting. We've seen it move all week. It opened at -1 for the Eagles, which I did get a small chunk out of. Obviously, in retrospect, I wish I got a little bit more of Eagles -1 now that we're seeing 2.5 and almost 3 in most places now as well. I would say I think the Eagles are going to win. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable laying 3, though. I do think this is a game that's going to come down to the last minute. Obviously, we know the 49ers like to grind these games up. We saw it with the Cowboys, right, where a lot of people are kind of criticizing them for their game against the Cowboys. We do have to remember, though, that's kind of 49ers football, right? They play real ugly football. They slow the game down, and they force the other team to make mistakes. So I think a lot of people are kind of confusing, Dallas throwing those 2 interceptions as some kind of outlier, like it's not the best defense in football they're playing against. So I think it'll be a really good game. I think one of the most interesting things to watch is this is the best offensive line in football, squaring off against the best defensive line in football. So normally the 49ers are used to having a huge trench advantage, right? They're used to dominating down there, having their way. That's not going to be the case with this Eagles team. That Eagles offensive line is extraordinary. So the run game is obviously not going to come as easily as it maybe has in the past, especially with, like we mentioned earlier, Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell both missing practice yesterday. It is a little bit concerning about how healthy each of those 2 guys will be. So it's going to be a great game. I'm super excited. I'm predicting a 1-score game, but I do think the Eagles do overall have the advantage. I'll get into why specifically a little bit later, but I will say, man, that elite secondary is going to make it very, very tough for Brock Purdy to operate how he wants to in this game.
Yeah, I think the time for Jalen Hurts is definitely going to be obviously important. We know that San Francisco is very good at pressure rate. And I wanted to just kind of put some numbers behind what you're saying with that offensive line. I know obviously we talk about the Eagles offensive line being fantastic. And the Eagles actually, this might be the first time I've ever seen it where the offensive line against the Niners is positive on both over on Pro Football Focus. It's only a 2% pass block advantage, but a 15% run block. That is interesting because I don't think we've ever seen it not be red for an offensive line against the Niners because they always crush and they're always obviously ranking out pretty well there too. Eric, I know you got a spot in this game. I'll let you start us off for our first bet of the game and of this show, and I'll let you drop some knowledge on us.
Yeah, so I totally am on the same wavelength as both you guys here. And Stu, I think you pointed that out really well, that when it comes to the offensive line, you're talking about the best offensive line in football. But what I find to be like a good angle here is so much of the basically like the criticism of the Eagles has been that the fact that they haven't played anybody. They played for wherever way, because when you do strength of schedule, there's a bunch of different ways to quantify that. You could go straight by winning percentage. You could add in other factors like who the other teams that you played, who they played, how they performed in those games. And I'm more interested in Football Outsiders DVOA. And if you go by strength of schedule, yes, the Birds had the easiest schedule in football, but who's right behind them? The San Francisco 49ers with a negative 5.8% DVOA of the teams they played, just 0.1% off of what the schedule that the Eagles played. So while the Niners are used to having so many advantages because that is a team loaded with all pros, especially on every level on offense, defense, and special teams, So are the Philadelphia Eagles. You also have two amazing coaches, and something that I think Shanahan's been able to do, or D'Amico Ryans, the Niners DC, has been able to do, is when they're playing against teams, like we mentioned, with worse offensive lines, you can get the pressure early. If you're in obvious run situations, you could stuff the run, get a 2nd and 10, a 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, have a tough, obvious passing situation. But Nick Sirianni is too smart for me to just kind of let Jalen Hurts run the ball on first down. Maybe they get a yard, maybe they don't, and then go back to trying to have Jalen Hurts become a pocket passer. This team built this entire offense around Jalen Hurts' rushing ability, so they know that he's limited in that aspect, and they're not going to put him in those terrible, obvious rushing situations. So just given that fact for the Eagles, I think that's a good spot for them offensively. And then, again, Brock Purdy, he has not played anybody, and if you look at his stats, like the wild card round against the Seahawks, 18 of 30, and you're going to see the 332 yards, like, oh, that looks great. Deebo Samuel took one of those passes 75 yards to the crib. The guy, 60% completion, not horrible, but the complexion of that stat line changes really, really quickly. I think the Cinderella story is kind of coming to an end. But with that being said, if you were giving me 3 points on the spread, which it seems like I'm seeing so many -2.5s, -120s, -120s, which is basically the same as +3 at even money. So if you can find a 3, I would definitely it's contradictory to say, because you're giving me points, I got to lean toward the Niners. But who do I think is going to win this game? And am I comfortable laying the juice on the Eagles on the money line? 100%. You have two great coaches, two great teams. Again, I just think that the going up a weight class in talent is going to be tougher for Brock Purdy than I think it is going to be for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very well said. That was kind of my conclusion too. And the way I looked at it is, I think both defensive coordinators are going to try to make the other, quarterback as uncomfortable as possible. So for the 49ers, I truly do believe the 49ers, by the way, we talked about the Eagles secondary. The 49ers have the best linebacker core in football, and it's not even particularly close, especially when you look at it in comparison to that Giants linebacker core that they just played last week. So what I do think that means, I think heavy contain on Jalen Hurts' rushing ability is going to be an absolute priority. And if there's any linebacker core that I trust to do it, it's going to be Greenlaw and Warner out there. So I do think the primary focus right there will actually be trying to make Jalen Hurts a pocket passer and take away that rushing ability that you kind of said is so important. The problem is, I think the Eagles are going to do that same kind of situation to Brock Purdy, right? Where they're going to take away all those underneath, all those in-breaking routes and make him try to beat them as a pocket passer. So then you kind of have to look at it pretty closely and go, okay, we're going right into it. Who do you think is more likely to beat you as a pocket passer? And I think at the end of the day, I have to agree with you and say that it's the Eagles. This kind of correlates with my play right here. Brock Purdy to throw an interception, -135. Playing it for half unit with the juice right here. Best price on DraftKings Sportsbook. We're seeing -160 on Caesars. I even saw Barstool and some of the Camby books had a 1.5 interception line, which is pretty funny. They don't even want any bets on that one line, which I can see why. I mean, it obviously just doesn't pass the eye test one. If you've been watching these games, we've been seeing dropped interception after dropped interception. I think one of the most interesting stats I heard this week was from Rob Pizzola, and he said that pretty much, well, first of all, let's talk about how this offense goes. You mentioned it briefly, right? It was yards after the catch, right? It was making these big plays over the middle, whether it's Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey in the passing game, or George Kittle in the tight end game. They dominate over the middle. That is exactly what they do. But when you really look at it, it's going to be a test, not so much of the Eagles' coverage skills. It's going to be more of a test of their tackling skills. And when you look how they rate out, it is absolutely awesome, right? They are the #1 team in yards after contact allowed in breaking routes. So routes over the middle, right? They allow the least amount of yards after contact, which is a terrible matchup for exactly what that San Francisco 49ers defense wants to do. So just like how the Eagles are going to take away, or the 49ers are going to take away Jalen Hurts' strength, I believe the Eagles will be able to take away the 49ers' strength. And what do you do when that happens? Brock Purdy's going to have to make some throws. He's going to have to make some really uncomfortable throws that he is not used to making. He's shown some poise. He's shown some ability to extend plays. But at the end of the day, I think some regression is coming. I think some of those drop passes are finally going to go our way. And I do think that the Eagles' extremely talented secondary is going to come away with an interception right here.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on a couple things here. I love what you talked about. I love that Eric talked about the strength of schedule for Purdy as well. But also, I wanted to take a look at the defensive line advantage for the Eagles, right? We look over there, minus 23% pass block advantage in this matchup. If we get pressure, which we saw in that Dallas game, right? That was like one of the only teams that was able to get pressure on Purdy. We've seen him struggle, right? I love that you talked about the strength of schedule because those 9 teams, I think they were bottom half of the NFL in DVOA in terms of defense, in terms of pressure rates, right? There's just struggling all over the place here. And I love this spot. I will be tailing you. I don't bet interception lines very often, but I'll be tailing you, Stu, on this one for sure. I love that spot.
I'll be as well there. I actually do love that because that's something like when it comes to like more advanced analytics, like to the naked eye, you're going to like notice some of these dropped interceptions or turnover worthy plays. And Brock Purdy's had a bunch of them over the last couple of games. Trayvon Diggs was the king of interceptions. Drops one through his hands last week, tip pass, whatever that may be. So I think at minus 135, I think initially kind of like the square way to look at it would be like, he hasn't thrown a pick since he started. What do you mean minus 135 for the over? But like, if you kind of watch the tape a little bit more, peel back a little bit, you're going to notice that like, yeah, he's probably had over the last 8 games, like 9, 10, 11 passes that could have easily been in the opponent's arms.
Yeah, you didn't have to bring up. I had Diggs interception plus 640 last week.
Wow.
So shout out to him for dropping that one. But yeah, I don't know. This is going to be a great game, but I do think that Brock Purdy is very likely to finally see some of that regression. Because I don't know if you've seen ESPN this week. They're dropping that stat. He's the first rookie to go this long without throwing a pick. They're really hyping this guy up. And I think it might be, unfortunately for me, because, hey, I don't like the Eagles at all. You know, I'm saying all this good stuff about them. I hate the Eagles. They're my least favorite team in football, right? But I do think it's probably time for us to see that Brock Purdy regression on a national stage.
Yeah, can you imagine how loud it's going to be for that rookie quarterback too? Like, I think he's only had like 2 or 3 road games. And when I looked at it, I think since he started coming over, I heard someone talk, I think he only had like 2. So obviously you're coming into Philly out there in January. It's gonna be a different ball game out there. For
and
sure.
that Raiders game in Las Vegas might as well have been a home game for the Niners at that point too.
Yeah, at least he did get a little Seattle though. Seattle is probably top 5 in home crowd and getting loud. So I would say at least he got a little bit of Seattle experience, although that was a way less high stakes game.
Less high stakes and like the ranking of defenses. Seattle is like in my like the bottom like 10.
Yeah.
Now you have to go to Philly. I saw someone did something to that Rocky statue. I'm seeing that everywhere today. Did you guys see that on Twitter? They put like a San Francisco red thing over the Rocky statue, and everybody's flipping out like it's like bulletin board material and shit. I'm like, come on, guys! Like, you think these guys give a shit what's going on out there with that? So, I think it's obviously it'll be a very good game. I know, Stu, you have another play to talk about in this one, but let's take a look here. Obviously, John dropping some knowledge here for us. Yeah, definitely get the fuck out of here. Love it. Terrence bringing up some Eagles hype here. Hey, I know how it is, man. Out here, we're crazy for tailgate. I'm sure Philly's going to be crazy for it, and I'm sure if they're going to be out there for 10 hours, you start at like 8 a.m. By the time it gets to 2, you're going to be in for it. You're going to be in for it on the field.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I really do think this is going to be a battle. And I honestly, the more I talk about it, the more I kind of want to sprinkle Jalen Hurts to throw an interception as well. I mean, it kind of depends on if you agree with my philosophy of the game, right? If you do believe that those linebackers are going to be very, very committed to stopping the run, then Hurts is also going to have to make some throws that we haven't seen Hurts have to make all season long, right? They've been very in control for a decent amount of their game. So I think the early game script will very much dictate how this goes. I think maybe if we see the 49ers go up 7-0, then I do think that's a situation where I would consider betting Jalen Hurts live to throw an interception. Not necessarily that 7-0 is enough to knock the Eagles off their game plan, just a situation that may force him to be a little bit more uncomfortable than we may have thought.
So just a random thought there. So I think that kind of goes both ways, right? Like if you're the Niners now and you're down 7-0 coming in, so this is a situation where you think whoever wins that coin toss is going to be receiving and not deferring like we normally see, because it seemed like, for example, the Giants last week, the second they deferred that coin toss, they lost the game, right? Obviously, both of these teams are a huge step up over the New York Giants, but that could be a situation because I think what you said about the game script, if you were down, I think that does go both ways. I think, again, for both these teams, there's no need to panic, obviously, a first quarter score, but yeah, you're not going to be able to try to run a banged up Eli Mitchell and CMC, if you're already down 7-0 halfway into the first quarter, it's already going to change the complexity of the game.
Yeah, I think if the Eagles win the coin toss, I could see Sirianni getting all fired up. Give us the ball, we're doing it. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, he's an amazing play caller, but man, this guy, you'd think he was born in 1932. So I don't think he's doing anything too aggressive to start out the game. I think he'd probably defer.
I think that's a great point, honestly.
All right, let's get to your second one here, Stu, and then we'll move on to Kansas City and Cincy.
Yeah, so there's two main reasons why I like A.J. Brown in this game. And this is one of those, I don't know if our guy John is still here, but I definitely did that ladder strategy where you go a little bit of a, 0.15, unit on the 100+ yards. You bring it up a little bit more. We know A.J. Brown is a very kind of boom or bust guy. He has some of the best big play ability, and he's sporting the highest, longest reception line I've seen so far this season at 27.5 is what I saw a little bit earlier. I believe you can get 26.5 with a little bit of juice on some books as well. So the books are clearly expecting that big play ability to be shown front and center. And as somebody that has watched a very large amount of 49ers tape, they really can get beat at that kind of deep over the middle sector of the field, right? I've talked a lot about Hufanga this season, how much I like him. I've been able to hit on his interception prop a couple times so far this season because he is so aggressive. But sometimes that aggression, sometimes that ball hawking ability, sometimes that trust from the defensive coordinator allows him to kind of put himself in out of position spots, right? And I do think if there's one wide receiver, if you look at efficiency over the middle, you look at yards after the catch over the middle, you look at separation over the middle, A.J. Brown is going to be top 3 in every single one of those categories. This is one of the most dominant wide receivers in football. And I do think he might be the number one nightmare matchup for the 49ers. I was thinking maybe Cooper Kupp has had a lot of success in that same kind of range as well. But over these last couple of weeks, we've seen wide receiver one after wide receiver one do very well against the San Francisco 49ers, whether that was Devontae Adams with Jarrett Stidham, or more recently in the playoffs with CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf. Both beating that 49ers defense vertically, not just over the middle, not just that, normal strength. They were beating them vertically, straight line speed. And we obviously know A.J. Brown has enough straight line speed to, give some to the rest of his teammates right here. So I think this is a much better matchup for Brown. We saw he was notably quiet last week. We saw, Devonta Smith was very involved. And I do think Smith will be certainly involved as usual, but I think this game is much more likely to go in A.J. Brown's direction. I think he'll be matched up against Lenore a decent amount in this game, who is someone that I think he's actually playing some of his best football. We're seeing a lot of people use some statistics that I think are a little bit unfair to him. If you look at how he's been playing over these last couple of weeks, it has been much improved. Ward has been actually the one getting beat on some of these deeper routes. But that being said, he is still a very young corner in a very scary matchup right here. So I have a lot of confidence that A.J. Brown gets things turned around. I think he's probably my favorite prop on the weekend.
Yeah, I love what you talked about there. Obviously, my biggest relation is definitely DK Metcalf. They kind of do this same kind of thing, right? They're huge, they're fast, they can make those big plays in contested coverage. So I love that comparison. I know he had a 50-yard touchdown in the first game of the playoffs. So we've seen them get beat deep. I also think that pass block is definitely going to help him out, right? That's why across the middle we talked about the safeties getting those picks, right? If you're under pressure, it's going to be a lot easier to get those picks that make them get the ball out before they want to. Here, if you're going to give Hurts an extra half second than most guys, give A.J. Brown another half second to get deep, I think that you could have some time back there to have Jalen Hurts make some plays, because I love watching A.J. Brown just go straight down the sideline. There's literally nothing you can do about it, almost Megatron-like, where it's just like you put the ball up, hey, somebody's coming down with it, and it's probably like a 70-30 chance that it's going to be A.J. Brown, not even a 50-50 ball at that point. So I do love that spot. I love that spot. Dude, CD just cooked him. And you knew it. He wasn't throwing it to anybody else. There was nobody even getting targets last week, and CD was still getting open. So now how are you going to do that with 2 1A, 1B receivers with Devontae and A.J. Brown? Eric, you got anything in this game too?
Yeah, no, just something I would look at also. So not anything that I'm looking at the numbers for, because Miles Sanders around 45.5 rushing yards. Even Kenny G, it's 10.5 yards. And if you look at his numbers, he's very spotty. But I think that, again, initially you would think that the Eagles aren't going to try to run the ball on the 49ers because of how good their run defense is. But you have to try to establish the run. They're going to trust their guys hat on hat, their offensive line. I'm not saying they're going to necessarily have this ton of success, but you can't just not even try to run the football. You have to at least give it a go.
Yeah, I think they will come out and run a little bit, but one of the biggest pluses to Nick Sirianni so far this year, and like I said, I'm not a guy that's really handed
You're
out.
You're hyping up Sirianni a lot, baby. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't even like Sirianni, and you're hyping him.
Yeah, no, I would say one of the most impressive things he's done is consistently he shifts his pass rate over expectation drastically based on the opponent he's facing. That sounds like common sense, right? You go against a really good run defense, you drastically shift to the pass. Believe it or not, that is not a common thing in the NFL. That is why it's sometimes so predictable. Sirianni is a guy that every single top 10 rush defense he's faced this season, they've seen a huge shift in the passing game. So I expect a similar thing right here. We obviously know the 49ers aren't a passing defense to be scared of, but this is a coaching staff that has been very confident putting Jalen Hurts in these passing situations when they're going against really good run defenses. So I agree. The run game won't completely disappear, right? We're going to see a lot of outside runs specifically. I think Hurts is going to try to get to the outside. I agree with you. I think we could see some Kenneth Gainwell, whether it's in the short passing game or just a couple little carries when they get down to the red zone. But I do think that they're going to shift pretty massively to the pass like they have all season long.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if it's going to be like the Washington Commanders against San Francisco, where Brian Robinson, I think, ran the ball 22 times for, I think, like 65 yards. It's the same play. Run it right up the middle. Just run as hard as you can into a block there. But I just want to point out, Eagles, I think, are number 2 in the NFL in first downs, rushing the ball so far this year. Only the Baltimore Ravens higher than that. So, when it comes down to even 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, dude, Jalen Hurts is on another planet with them QB sneaks. So those are just, it's like almost every time what's happening, you still can't stop it. So I like this. I like that stat. Definitely to help out Stu's case there for sure. And we will head on over to the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Cincinnati Bengals. We've been talking all week. Everybody's talking about it. Joe Burrow. He's got his number. Obviously, this one's in Arrowhead. It's a big game, conference championship game. We got these odds have been everywhere, right? I think I've seen it from +1 on one side. Now it's -1 for the Chiefs. It was +1 before. It's Kansas. Once we seen it come out, I think it was 2 to start, and then all of a sudden they flipped to a dog in a day. So a lot of crazy movement. Do you guys see anything in that movement? Do you guys look at that? Obviously, this is more probably directed towards Eric because you're more of the spreads money line guy, and we're more of the props guys. So do you care about that movement? Does that help you read this, or what do you look at?
Yeah, so from a sides and money line and total perspective, you always have to respect the betting market, right? You can put together any analysis you want and you can come to a number you want. And yeah, there's going to be times where you're able to find edges. When we're talking about the NFC Championship game and the AFC Championship game, there are 2 games on the slate. Odds makers have all their attention focused on all these things. You want to try to make some easy money, go look at college basketball or something like that. This is the toughest stuff you're going to have to go bet. But I got in on this game when the Chiefs got to +115. I hopped in immediately, just more so with not digging in anything. Again, not trying to say anything outrageous. You're giving me Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs at home as an underdog. So I snatched that up, and I was surprised to see it go all the way back that quickly to the Chiefs getting a point. But I have a question for both of you right now. So if you never saw the Mahomes injury, the game in Jacksonville ends the same way it does, but there's no speculation of the injury, what do you guys make this line at? Because I personally would have it at KC minus 3.5. So I thought it was an overreaction to the injury, which is why I got in at +115. But there obviously are a lot of statistical things in the way that Lou Anarumo and that defense and that offense plays that stack up well against the Kansas City Chiefs. For example, the Chiefs were last in the NFL in passing touchdowns allowed, second to last in red zone percentage on defense, which is obviously Joe Burrow, their bread and butter, and they're playing on an exceptionally much higher level right now. But I was kind of just under the impression where if Mahomes never got hurt, I thought this line would be higher, and you gave me Mahomes as an underdog. So I snuck in there. I also did tease the Niners +8.5 with the Chiefs +7.5 when they were 1.5 point underdogs. So enough said, I have a lot of exposure on the Kansas City Chiefs on the money line this weekend and with a 7.5 point cushion.
Yeah, I'll kind of talk about what you said with the spread there. I think this is pretty damn even. Maybe pick 'em -1, but then you get it in KC. So I usually give 1.5 to 2. So maybe a 2.5, 3 is where I would have set it. just because of the home field. Obviously, Arrowhead is one of the toughest places to play. We've seen Burrow have success there, so I'm not going to take it as much. So even 1.5, maybe seeing it at like a -2, -1.5 would be kind of where I would sit. Stu, where would you put it if you were an lines maker here?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of nailed it. I think I'd probably open 2.5, something around that. I would not be shocked at all if 3 was the number. And then we could even see it kind of move over to that 3.5 point if Mahomes was healthy. I do think the Burrow public, right? The public is obviously loving Joe Shiesty out here. And I don't think they're letting that number get over 3 at any. I mean, we're seeing what they're calling it Burrowhead instead of Arrowhead out there. There's obviously a lot of confidence from the public in Joe Burrow right there. And just to toss it back to Eric right here, I see the line is currently around the -115 range, which is just telling us the books are viewing them very equally right now. Are you still comfortable with them at that number?
Yeah, so I do think they're going to win outright. Like, again, part of betting, as you guys know, is number, right? So I was getting, again, Mahomes and the Chiefs +115, so I thought that there was too much value there. But yeah, I am comfortable taking them on the money line at around -115, -120. Like you said, the public sentiment is very much so on Joe Burrow. He's very quickly, I guess it's been like 2 years, but he's emerged himself as the fan favorite. Like, you'd think this confident kind of guy would kind of maybe be hated, but no, everybody's loving what Joe Burrow is doing. So I think that there is that public sentiment there. But yes, Mahomes is 0-3 against Burrow, but I don't know if that's going to already categorize for me as he owning him, right? If the Bengals come in there and win by 7, 8, even double digits in this game, then yeah, that narrative I think can stick. But 3 games, Mahomes, best quarterback, throwing the injury though, that's what really makes this game interesting, and that's why I don't think there's a consensus with who's going to be favored. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Bengals be laying points again by the time we kick off at 6:30 Eastern on Sunday.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I will actually get a play out for you guys. Sorry, I haven't been had no plays in the first game, so I got 2 in this one. But I'm going to 2 of the bigger boys here, right? I'm going to be rolling the same game parlay. Jamar Chase 6 catches, Travis Kelce 64.5 receiving yards. I just looked at Travis Kelce's like last 3 seasons worth of playoff games, and it is unbelievable what they do in the playoffs. They come up with these new ways, new strategies to try to get him the ball. We go back to 2020. He averaged 122 yards per game in those 3 games, obviously running through Tampa Bay, Buffalo in there. Even against Cincinnati last year in their loss in overtime, he ended up with 95 and a touchdown on 11 targets there, averaging 97 yards per game in those. Obviously, last week we can kind of tell the Jaguars, they did struggle. Obviously, they struggled all year against the tight end. But still, it's going to him. It didn't even matter if it was Chad Henne out there. He still got the ball, still found a way to be open on pretty much every single play. I can't go away from Kelce in this same game parlay. I think 64.5 is obviously buying it down quite a bit over on the DraftKings same game parlay option, but I can't get away from him in the playoffs. Just the pure volume that he's getting, how good he is after the catch. I know he had to struggle against Cincinnati in one of the games this year. That doesn't really scare me away when it comes to playoff time and him at home. It's just a different beast. And then going to Jamar Chase, he hit this in their one matchup already this year with 7. Had it last year against these guys when it came to the playoffs. He's over 32% target rate now since coming back off his hip injury. There's just so many targets. I'm going with volume in this game, man. You got to go stars show up in the big games. I'm going with these guys because it's not like we're betting on like a wide receiver 3, right, where we're hoping that he gets targets. These guys are on the field. These guys are running every single route that they can. It's the biggest game of the season, right, for both teams. I wouldn't expect to see either one of these guys in single digits for targets. And obviously Chase has been absolutely fantastic since coming back off his injury.
And just another quick point on to why I'm leaning also for the Chiefs to win outright. So the Buffalo Bills, obviously a great team, but we're definitely one of the most overrated teams. And if you were watching and paying attention over the last couple of weeks, they couldn't stop anybody on the ground. So everybody expected with this offensive line, the injuries that the Bengals had, for them to maybe have a high volume Burrow game when instead they just pounded the football. But that was the matchup base because, again, the Buffalo Bills, they couldn't stop Miami's running game. They barely run the football. Over the last couple of weeks of the season, they couldn't stop anybody. But I think that the advantage then now goes to like Chris Jones and that defensive line for the Chiefs, because also Ted Karras, their center now, was banged up. So there's a potential to have 3, again, replacement players who, yes, they practiced all last week. They played last week, have the whole week of practice this week. but also maybe a fourth player on that O-line, their center, who is a big acquisition for them, who could be also hurt. You're going against Chris Jones, who it's Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, if we're talking defensive tackles. So I think that also adds to what you're saying with the passing volume for Burrow. I think that's going to add up. So I would potentially shy away from mixing yards, because I saw somebody in the comments put that out there, because you're not going against that weak Buffalo defensive front, no Von Miller, basically nothing. You're going against one of the, I want to say better, but you're going against a much more stout defensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, every advanced metric, too, is kind of pointing out the Chiefs as one of the best run defenses in football. It's always kind of hard to measure that, because that doesn't fully take into account the facts that you can't run on the Chiefs a lot of the time when you're down 14 points, right? When you're losing to the Chiefs, it makes it a little bit harder to kind of commit to those run-heavy game scripts. And as for what Plus Money Bob said, I was literally just going to bring that up. I do think an important thing right here is anyone who's ever played football knows that first step burst is so important to getting pressure on the quarterback. And that snow really took a lot of that away from Buffalo. I outlined in a lot of my articles last week why I thought Buffalo would struggle to get pressure, and I don't think that's going to be necessarily a problem as much in this Kansas City game. So I kind of agree. I think that Bengals offensive line will not look as good as maybe some people think it would after they held up very well last week. So I think that benefits Ja'Marr Chase a lot. I've talked about this plenty this season, but Ja'Marr Chase is a guy, when we think of him, when you think of all those rookie year huge catches, we think of him as this huge down the field threat, but he's been a catches machine. I've been much more likely to go to receptions than yards or longest reception this season, because he is so involved in the screen game. I mean, it's almost Tyreek Hill level involved in the screen game at this point, where they're getting him those short passes, they're getting him involved near the line of scrimmage, and they're giving him the ability to make plays after the catch. So I think Chase is obviously a very likely one right here. Kelsey, I'm a little bit more worried just for the fact that I think the volume is going to be there. We know Kelsey is elite at getting those soft spots in the zone. So I think I like catches more than I like yards. I think this, it almost could take 8, 9, 10 catches for Travis Kelsey to hit this mark, when you could possibly be getting that at I believe 6.5 was -148. That's the best price. And I know DraftKings never gives you the good receptions prop in the same game parlay builder. Yeah. So I would say I'm a little bit more concerned for Kelsey, but I do think Chase is, I don't want to use the L word, but it's getting pretty close right there.
Yeah, you're scaring me. Don't use that. Don't use that, Stu. Don't use that 4-letter L word. We don't. I guess that could also be something else. I don't think we're gonna say that there on the show though. But no, I agree. I wish they did give me the receptions on that, but yeah, I can't get away from these numbers in these playoff games. I just can't. And I think, am I the next one too? I'm going right back in. I might need a drink of water or something here shortly. But I absolutely love. Eric, thank you for doing a lot of my work for me, because I'm going back to Joe Burrow completions, talking about my boy Chris Jones. I love Chris Jones. I think they're going to have a lot harder time running on this Kansas City team. But I know, Stu, you brought up you can't really use – we talk about this all the time. When you get behind, obviously your run game is going to look way, way worse against teams when you're losing, right? But we go against this Chiefs number, right? We go on this Chiefs team. We already talked about – I know Eric brought up the touchdowns, right? Kansas City's giving up the most touchdown passes. They also allowed the 4th most completions and the 3rd most attempts. So we're going to be seeing this ball fly around the yard. Obviously, I'm leaning the Chiefs as well. So I'm hoping we get Joe behind in this game. In the 3 matchups, he's averaging over 26 completions in these games as well. I think you're going to have to. This is how you're going to move the ball. I love that we talked about Ja'Marr Chase being the short underneath spots now instead of those 50-yard bombs. I think that's going to also help us. And I know we missed for us last time. I know we have the sour taste in our mouth, but you got to go right back to it. We go back to the well. Doesn't matter if he missed the last one. They didn't even pass the ball in the second half. He had 18 first-half completions last game, and then they just didn't really care, right? All they had to do was run the game out. Obviously, the Bills didn't help us at all, but if I had to trust a guy to get points, I'm probably going to trust Patrick Mahomes to get points in the playoffs and kind of get that game getting into that shootout type of format that we want this game to turn into. So I'm going back to Joe Burrow completions. I know, like I said, we lost it last week, but who would have thought? Who would have thought that they were going to absolutely bum rush the Bills, right? Mm-hmm. You would have taken the alternate spread at 14 and you're making huge money, right? So I don't think I saw too many tickets like that, but I also think that we're going to start to see the Chiefs actually play pretty well at home here again in a huge spot. And Patrick Mahomes is hearing that all week. Oh, this guy's 3-0 against you, 3-0 against you. I assume he's going to start fast. A top 5 first half scoring team in the Kansas City Chiefs. Sign me up, baby. Let's go. Patrick Mahomes, Burrow, sign me up. I'm hype already.
Yeah, no, I obviously like the spot. I like kind of the analysis both you guys gave relating to this one. And I do think it's one of those situations where he has a lot of low ADOT targets, right? We talked about Chase. We know Hayden Hurst has been phenomenal with that volume over the middle. It's just that dependable check down. He's always there, just 5-6 yards from the line of scrimmage. He keeps trying to hurdle people. I don't know why. It never works. I don't know if you guys have noticed this watching his tape. He tries it like once a game, and I don't think it's actually worked all season long. But he's obviously always there. We have P. Ryan and Mixon, who are both very dependable pass catchers out of the backfield. And then we know if Higgins just once, if we kind of ignore Higgins, we focus maybe the safety helps on Chase a little bit more, that's when he's going to burn you. He's a phenomenal wide receiver that would be a wide receiver 1 on most teams. So plenty of weapons right here. And I agree. I think the rush attack isn't going to quite look as good. I mean, we have a whole season sample size of Joe Mixon being one of the least efficient running backs in football. He beats up on a Bills team in the snow for 1 week, and we suddenly think that's going to shift. I'm not completely sold on that yet.
I agree with that.
Hey, shout out to Samaje P. Ryan doing everything he could do last week, trying to get us to cash a completions prop last week. That man was getting like 1-yard checkdowns on every single pass in that 2-minute drill. I absolutely love it. Shout out to P. Ryan. Hopefully you get more run this week so we can get some completions and I don't have to watch Mr. Mixon.
Where was this last week?
I know.
I come in here, guys. What do you think about P. Ryan? I like P. Ryan this week. I'm getting laughed at by PPS and Ben. Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I think he had He had 4 for 11, and I'm like, hey, keep falling over after 2 yards, bro. Just get that catch, fall over. That's all we want.
He was crushing it. So P. Ryan, obviously, they adjusted that number now, though. That number is up 16, 17 or something like that this week. So they're clearly a hit, while we were a little bit ahead last week. And I said on the show, I was trying to get the live bet. I was hoping first possession would be Mixon. We'd get a lower number. That's not what happened. P. Ryan hit the yards in the first drive pretty much. So that's life when you try to live bet sometimes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's get to a couple questions here. Get to our recap. I know we got that time limit. We're getting here. We got 10 minutes left, guys. Trying to be a little bit under that. So let's take a look here. Do you guys think about this in these big games? Are you guys thinking to go to these big-time quarterback interception props? I know we were talking about Purdy. Obviously, this is a big game for him. We talk about Hurts. Hasn't really been in these huge games like this very often. But these two are vets in this situation, right? Do we lean to either one? I mean, I would probably have to see Mahomes at plus money quite a bit for me to bet on one of these.
Right now, I'm seeing Mahomes on one shot over an interception, over 0.5 interceptions, minus 105. So, and the best I'm seeing is minus 105, is minus 118 both ways. So the juice is to the under for 0.5 interceptions for Mahomes right now is what I'm seeing at some books. And I'll take a dive into Burrow. Personally, for me, I like the way, again, Lou Anarumo, the defense coordinator for the Bengals, deserves as much respect as D'Amico Ryans has been getting or any other coordinator who's been getting all this love. So, again, I didn't do a full deep dive. I'm not going to go out here now and be like, oh, I think he's going to throw a pick. But I am more confident in Mahomes throwing a pick than Burrow. I don't know if you guys agree there.
Well, Mahomes is probably throwing that ball 50 times in this game too, right? I mean, when it gets in, even when they're winning, he's chucking. So in terms of just volume like that, I think Mahomes would be my lean too if I had to pick one of these two.
Yeah, no, via PFF too. I know that this Bengals defense has the most perfectly covered plays, once again graded by PFF, out of any team in the second half this season, and it's by a pretty good margin. So not only are they a phenomenal defense, they're making great halftime adjustments. So for me, I would have to say it's Mahomes in this one as well, and I do think that's something that I'll probably consider betting, or even at least if we have some prize picks guys, throwing in one of those little, 5-leg, 4-leg parlays, because one of those situations, we talked a little bit about the Chiefs run defense. The Bengals have an even better run defense, right? I'm obviously a huge DJ Reader fan. His impact since coming back and being healthy has definitely been found. I think Pacheco will have some opportunities, just the style of runner he is. He's an explosive runner. They're going to try to get him outside. They're not going to just jam the ball up the middle. They're not a stupid team. So I think they're going to have some chances, but this is going to be a very pass-heavy attack. And if Mahomes loses that mobility, right, because Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. It's not really a debate right there, but what makes him the best quarterback in football is his ability to continue to play off script, right? He is so good off script. When you take that away from him and you kind of take away, his bread and butter, I think that kind of makes him a little bit less of a superhero and a little bit more of a regular quarterback. And regular quarterbacks throw interceptions against good defenses. So I don't mind minus 105 at all.
Perfect. I don't think we have any other questions. If you guys do have more questions, we say it every week. I know we're coming at you at noon Central, 1 o'clock Eastern. A lot of you guys might not be able to join us live, but we'll be talking about this stuff all weekend, posting out the link to this video. If you have questions, drop them after the show. We will get to them. Me and Stu are pretty locked in on those. We get those notifications on those, so we will get there for you. We will get to our recap. We'll start out with Stu. We'll start out with your plays, and then we'll go to – we saw Terrence was the first guy in the chat. Terrence is in the chat. We got to go long shot. So we got our long shot for you. And let's get it started here. Stu, you can start us off, and we'll go over to Eric's plays after.
Yep, I started out with A.J. Brown to have over 70.5 receiving yards, minus 115. I really wouldn't be shocked if this is one that closes 73, 74 by kickoff at least. And then we're going Brock Purdy to throw an interception, minus 135 on DraftKings, and that's already up to like minus 140, minus 160 in a lot of other places.
I started off with the Birds on the money line. I don't want anything to do with the points there. Just give me the team to win outright. And then in the second game, I took the Chiefs, got them at plus money. Still like them as a slight favorite now. And then another tidbit, if they do become dogs again, I would gladly choose the Niners plus the 8.5 and the Chiefs plus 7.5. I already locked it in myself.
Beautiful. I will be tailing those money lines. I love both spots myself. And I'm going to one game, right? I'm only staying in that Kansas City game. I'm going same game parlay. Jamar Chase, 6 catches with Travis Kelce to get 64.5 receiving yards. Make sure you go to the DraftKings same game parlay build for this one. And this is on FanDuel, and that is Joe Burrow over 24.5 completions, minus 122. My biggest play of the weekend. I know it was the biggest play of my weekend last week too, but hey, Joe Shiesty doesn't get us twice. He's a man of the show. He's a follower of the show. He knows he doesn't want to take my money like that, So we're going to hope that Joe's watching today. Even if you got to watch tomorrow, Joe, I know you're busy, but hopefully you can and check it out so we can get that money here. So long shot time. We will kick it over to Eric. We got it in order here. Eric, kick us off with your first leg for our touchdown parlay.
Yeah, we mentioned it going over the game. The Chiefs lead as a pass funnel, a good run defense. They also allowed the most touchdowns over the regular season to wide receivers. Like you guys also spoke about, Jamar Chase gets a ton of targets, but if you leave T. Higgins on the outside with your eyes focused on Jamar Chase, he can beat you for 70 yards. He can beat you on a fade for 5 yards. So I like T. Higgins to find pay dirt this weekend.
And I just want to say, too, Higgins is literally the exact kind of replica of wide receiver that I always bet for touchdowns. And it's a guy that not only does he have the size and strength to catch those 50-50 balls in the red zone, but he has the elite downfield usage to score from outside of the red zone, which is really, when you think about it, not a characteristic you get outside of too many guys besides maybe an A.J. Brown, a DK Metcalf, and a Mike Williams. It's a pretty, short category. So I had Higgins last week. He didn't come through for me, but I think I'm going to be going right back to the well with you right here. As for me, I went with Jalen Hurts. I talked about this a little bit last week as well. Hurts is one of those guys. He had elite red zone usage in the first half of the season. As the games, he had the injury stuff. The games got a little bit less important in the second half, and we saw them dial back that red zone usage, right? He wasn't quite as involved. Now that it's playoff time, we saw him get in there last week. There's so many different ways they can utilize this. Not only is he a creative rusher, but as we know, the Eagles pretty much single-handedly popularized all those quarterback sneak formations where they got the big boys behind just pushing them right in. That opens up so many different possibilities in the playbook. You can fake those. You can have them on the outside run. And guess what? If a play just breaks down, Jalen Hurts can make something happen off script on his own. So Hurts is by far my favorite touchdown scorer of the week. And to see that plus 125 on FanDuel was like crazy to me. So took that one solo and threw it in this parlay here as well.
Yeah, I don't even know what I didn't even chop around the Kelce touchdown spot, but 8 touchdowns in his last 7 playoff games. This man is literally every single time in the red zone is being looked at here. Multiple touchdowns in 2 of those last 7 as well. So we've seen him score a touchdown in 6 of his last 7 playoff games. And like I said, 8 touchdowns in those 7 games. So I can't get away from Kelce here. I'll be on him in probably 3 or 4 different ways in this game here. I got to go back to him. Even if he only has, 30 yards. We see him score 4 touchdowns and get 30 yards in that primetime game where he has 4 of them and just in the red zone getting those 5-yarders. So very tough to cover in the red zone in that short spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those situations where, like, it's Travis Kelce. To get Travis Kelce at minus 105 to score a touchdown is just crazy. Like, he was minus 165 last week.
Yep.
And I know Mahomes is going to be a little bit slower. I think the pace of this game will come down a little bit because of it, but I think that's an overreaction. I mean, like you said, it's Travis Kelce in the playoffs at the end of the day.
And he scored last week.
Did you have 1 or 2 last week?
Did he have 2? I don't remember.
Did he have 2 touchdowns? I thought he had 2.
No clue.
Oh, he might have been 2.
2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns last week. I was going to say, I think I had him in DK last week, and that man was just dropping like 40 on these people, just dunking on them the whole time. So, obviously, hopefully we can get this long shot for you guys. Only 2 games. Obviously, we're going to have 2 of them in the same game there. So, all right. We're closing up shop here, guys. We're getting to the end of the show. Thank you, Eric, for popping on. What do you got for the people here? Where can they find you? Where can they find your content?
Yeah, so most of my content is hosted at sportsmemo.com. You can go and search up myself in the expert category. I need to thank you, PPS and Stu, for having me on the show. This was an absolute blast. Shout out to the audience also. You guys are amazing with the questions, and I'm looking forward to hopefully being here in the near future, talking some Super Bowl, NBA, MLB is coming up if you guys are into that. So sports never stop, as we know. So thank you guys for having me on, and hope we're all going to cash together. We got some really great insights from all 3 of us.
And the lights go off right as he finishes the outro. Perfect timing right there. Yeah, this was a great show. I like all the plays. I think we're actually very on the same page, which is always good to see. This isn't something that was rehearsed or talked about beforehand. Just all of us kind of similar outlook on the game is always good. And as you guys know, I'll be having a couple more articles over the course of the week. I'll have one with FTN tonight. I'll have an odds checker, same game parlay for both of the games. So just a ton of stuff to come. You know, we obviously have to have our great bets, but I know you guys are going to be watching this with your buddies out at the bar. We got to get some long shots as well, too. So we started out with the touchdown parlay. I'll probably have an interception bet or 2 by the end of this week as well. So plenty of stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, I always like to bring that up. Hey, just listen to the show about in your car, right when you're driving to the bar with your buddies. Just listen to that little snippet. Hey, these guys have a good DVOA, blah, 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 all these crazy numbers. Yeah. Take that to them. Everybody's going to think you're a genius just for giving out some numbers, even if it's a crazy one. Even throw a crazy number out there. Whatever it is, that's what we're here for, right? Make you guys betters on our end. Make sure you guys go follow Eric if you haven't already. We have his Twitter link in the description of the video. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Eric, again for coming on and joining us here. And let's crush this conference weekend. Obviously, we got 6 plays. And that long shot, hey, it's coming through. I have a feeling this week. So have a good one, guys, and best of luck on all your bets.